Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. For today, Group 4 will discuss about cognitivism and psychoanalytic criticism. Let us start first with cognitivism. What is cognitivism? I want everyone to imagine that we are in a library reading our favorite storybook. When we read, we tend to think about how our brains work and what makes us interested or confused about the story. This way of understanding is called cognitivism. We are focused on the actual comprehension of the story. Another way to understand the story is by thinking about what the writer, the characters, and the readers might be feeling or hiding deep inside their minds when writing or reading the story. This is called psychoanalytic criticism. Today, Group 4 will look at these two ways and learn how we can relate them to research, learning, and in education as a whole. We all know that cognitivism is a learning theory that focuses on how information is received, organized, stored, and retrieved by the mind. Here, the mind is considered as an information processor just like a computer, and learning as an internal mental process. Since it is processing information when we learn, then learning is never passive. Cognitivists believe that learning is an active process of constructing knowledge and the learners are actively involved in it. Just like behaviorists, the cognitivists observe changes in behavior but only as an indication of what is going on in the learner's mind. In fact, in the 1950s, cognitivism was developed as a response or a reaction to behaviorism, where cognitivists felt that behaviorists thought learning was simply a reaction to a stimulus and ignored the idea that thinking plays an important role. Now, who are the people behind this theory? You might have Brunner, Vygotsky, Bloom, and other researchers in mind. However, John Piaget's view had a tremendous impact when he viewed knowledge as a symbolic mental constructs or schemata. When learner's schemata changes, learning takes place. That is the overview of cognitivism. Now, let's learn how we can relate cognitivism in research, learning, and education. In the context of research undertakings, cognitivists use various methods to study mental processes and their effects on behavior. For example, some cognitivists use experiments to manipulate variables and measure outcomes, such as reaction time, accuracy, or brain activity. Other cognitivists use observational or correlational methods to examine the relationships between cognitive factors and real-world phenomena, such as academic performance, social interaction, or mental health. Example of this is the origins of intelligence in children, a theory of cognitive development based on clinical interviews and naturalistic observations. Piaget in 1952 developed a theory of cognitive development that describes how children thinking changes as they grow older. He used clinical interviews and naturalistic observations to study how children solve problems, reason logically, and understand concepts in different stages of development. Another examples are discovery learning, a method for enhancing critical thinking skills in college students, reciprocal teaching, a strategy for improving reading comprehension in elementary school students. Another one is anchored instruction, a method for enhancing science learning in middle school students. And the last example is inquiry learning, an effective approach to teaching science in high school. In the context of learning, cognitivists emphasize the role of mental processes in acquiring and applying knowledge. Cognitivists view learning as an active and constructive process that involves encoding, storing, retrieving, and transferring information. Cognitivists also recognize that learning is influenced by individual differences, prior knowledge, motivation, and metacognition. Some of the learning principles that cognitivists propose are information processing. Learning involves processing information through sensory memory, working memory, and long-term memory. To facilitate learning, information should be presented in meaningful chunks, organized hierarchically hierarchically and categorically and connected to existing knowledge. Next is elaboration. Learning is enhanced when learners elaborate on the information they receive by adding details, examples, and explanations or connections. Elaborations help learners to deepen their understanding and retention of the information. The last one is scaffolding. Learning is supported when learners receive guidance or assistance from more knowledgeable others, such as teachers or peers, or from tools such as prompts or feedback. Scaffolding helps learners to overcome difficulties and achieve goals that they could not finish or accomplish on their own. Next, in the context of education, after conducting research, cognitivists apply their theories and findings to design effective instructional strategies and interventions that foster cognitive development and learning outcomes. Cognitivists aim to create learning environments that stimulates learners' curiosity, interest, and engagement, provide clear goals and expectations, offer meaningful and relevant tasks, facilitate active and interactive learning, provide feedback and reinforcement, and promote self regulation and reflection. Some examples of educational application based on cognitivism are advanced organizers. These are introductory materials that provide an overview or framework of the main ideas or concepts that will be learned. Advanced organizers help learners to activate their prior knowledge and prepare them for new information. Next is concept maps. These are graphical presentations that show the relationship among concepts using nodes and links. Concept maps helps learners to organize their knowledge visually and hierarchically. The last one is mnemonics. These are techniques that help learners to remember information by associating it with something more familiar or memorable. Mnemonics can be verbal, such as acronyms, or rhymes, or visual, such as images or diagrams. That's it for the overview of cognitivism. Next, you'll learn about its principles in detail. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Leomel A. Amparado, and I am going to continue the discussion on cognitivism. At this time, I'm going to focus on the basic principles of cognitivism. So, based on my research, I have found out five basic principles of cognitivism. They are first, information processing. Second, we have schema theory. Third, we also have problem solving. Fourth, cognitive development. And fifth, we have attention and memory. So let us discuss first the very first principle, which is information processing. In the context of cognitivism, information processing refers to the intricate mechanism through which the mind receives, interprets, and stores information. Analogous to a computer, the mind encodes incoming information, organizes it, and retains it for future use. This perspective or this principle emphasizes how individuals encode, store, and retrieve information. It also underscores the significance of how individuals break down complex information into a more manageable components to understand and solve problems effectively. For example, a student tackling a complex mathematical problem employs their cognitive abilities to systematically process each step, thereby demonstrating the principle of information processing. Okay, second, we have schema theory. In the realm of cognitivism, the schema theory elucidates how individuals construct mental frameworks to organize and interpret the information they encounter. These mental frameworks or schemas help individuals navigate new information by linking or relating it to existing knowledge structures. For instance, when someone encounters a new type of animal, they draw upon their pre existing understanding of different animal categories to classify and understand the new species. This process elucidates or illustrates how schema theory aids in comprehending and interpreting new information based on prior knowledge. The third principle is that we have problem solving. Cognitivism, everyone, places a strong emphasis on problem solving skills, emphasizing the cognitive processes involved in tackling complex issues. It considers factors such as reasoning, decision making, and critical thinking in the problem solving process. For instance, a manager's strategic decision making process involves analyzing market trends, understanding customer preferences, and evaluating competitor strategies to develop a comprehensive and effective plan of action. This underscores how problem solving, as highlighted by cognitivism, are crucial in various real life scenarios. Fourth, we have cognitive development. So, cognitivism, ladies and gentlemen, acknowledges the dynamic nature of cognitive development, emphasizing how mental processes evolve and mature over time. It recognizes that cognitive abilities change with age and experience, indicating that individuals' cognitive capabilities are not static, but rather continue to develop throughout life. For example, a child's understanding of the concept of conservation evolves as they mature, initially struggling with the idea, but gradually comprehending it with age and experience. This aspect highlights the role of cognitive development in shaping individuals' cognitive abilities over time. Lastly, we have attention and memory. In the context of cognitivism, attention and memory play pivotal roles in the learning process. Attention influences what information is processed, while memory aids in retaining and retrieving information when needed. For instance, a student's active engagement during a lecture demonstrate the significance of attention in processing information effectively. Additionally, the use of mnemonic devices or memory techniques to retain key points for later examination exemplifies the importance of memory in learning. This highlights how cognitivism recognizes the interplay between attention and memory in the learning process, emphasizing their roles in facilitating effective information processing and retention. So, ladies and gentlemen, by focusing on this key principle, five basic key principles in cognitivism, it will provide us with insights into how individuals perceive, process, and utilize information to make sense of the world around them. Thank you very much.
So now let's proceed to cognitivism philosophical stance. So first, what is the main idea of cognitivism? We'll know that when you say Cognitivism deals with the mind. So the mind is an information processor, and learners process information by activating prior knowledge or schema in order to make connections for new learning. Cognitivism is essentially how we absorb information, solve problems, and ultimately learn. So, let's say, for example, a child has already a background knowledge of something. So, when they encounter something that is almost similar to that knowledge, they're just going to activate their schema in order to create a new learning or yes. So let us have number two. Why is cognitivism important in education? Cognitivism is the basis for most learning theories, as it deals with the way our brains absorb, retain, and recall knowledge. Cognitivism is also crucial in the development of learning new skills and memorizing concepts that would otherwise be difficult to remember without the connection of neural pathways. So that's why cognitivism is very important in education, since in learning we need to absorb, retain, and recall what we've learned so that we could continue learning new things. Next, number three, how is cognitivism used in the classroom? So, cognitivism is used in the classroom by educators to make learning meaningful and permanent for students. Educators can use a variety of strategies in the beginning, middle, and conclusion of a learning cycle so that connections are made in the brains of the learners so that the knowledge that have been imparted by the teacher will retain in the long-term memory of the students. Number four, what is an example of cognitivism? Cognitivism is all about the internal mental processes that are responsible for learning taking place, such as receiving, organizing, storing, and retrieving information. So, an example of cognitivism is the way that we solve problems by using our prior knowledge. So, that's all for the cognitivism philosophical stance. And next will be the psychoanalytic criticism.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Mary Grace, and for today, I'm going to talk about psychoanalytic criticism in research, education, and learning. For today, we're going to explore the application of psychoanalytic criticism in the realms of research, education, and learning. This approach offers unique insights into the human psyche, literature, and educational dynamics. Now, what is psychoanalytic criticism? Psychoanalytic criticism is an approach that applies Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory to the interpretation of literature, culture, and human behavior. It emphasizes the role of the unconscious mind and includes concepts like the id, ego, and superego. Psychoanalytic criticism in research can be used to analyze literary texts and other cultural artifacts. It argues that literary texts like dreams express the secret unconscious desires and anxieties of the author, that a literary word manifestation of the author's own neurosis. Psychoanalytic criticism helps researchers uncover hidden motivations, desires, and conflicts. Also, researchers use this approach to analyze various aspects of human behavior and culture. Now, here are a few research topics aligned with the psychoanalytic criticism. Number one, the influence of unconscious motivations on student engagement in STEM education. This study aims to understand how unconscious factors such as fear of failure impact student engagement in STEM subjects. By using psychoanalytic criticism, researchers can shed light on the hidden motivations that influence students' academic choices and performances. The second example is psychoanalytic interpretations of classic literature in the high school curriculum. This research explores the application of psychoanalytic criticism to classic literature, enhancing students' understanding of text. It can inform curriculum development, allowing students to explore unconscious themes in classic literature. Now, this time, let's try to talk about psychoanalytic criticism and its application in education. In education, psychoanalytic criticism has been used to analyze and interpret literary works that focus on psychoanalytic theory. It has helped educators understand how students learn and how to create effective teaching strategies. For instance, psychoanalytic theory suggests that learners should be provided with opportunities to connect new information with their prior knowledge. This can help them anchor new information and connect it to the existing knowledge. Also, psychoanalytic criticism is relevant in understanding student motivation, teacher student relationships, and educational policies. Now, here are a few examples of how this approach can be applied in educational research. Example number one, the impact of transference and countertransference in teacher student relationships. These unconscious dynamics affecting teacher student relationships. And also, by recognizing and addressing these dynamics, educators can enhance the learning environment. For the second example, we have psychoanalytic critique of educational policy formation. Psychoanalytic criticism can uncover hidden motivations and biases in policymakers. This approach can inform more effective educational policy formation. Now, next, I'm going to talk about psychoanalytic criticism in learning. Psychoanalytic criticism can be applied to learning to gain deeper understanding of the psychological and emotional aspect that influence the learning process. Now, here are some uses of psychoanalytic criticism in learning. The first one is self reflection and personal development. Psychoanalytic principles can be applied to encourage students to engage in self reflection. Analyzing their dreams, thoughts, and emotions from a psychoanalytic perspective can help students gain insights into their unconscious motivations, fears, and desires. Thus, self awareness can contribute to personal development and a better understanding of oneself. The second one is understanding student behavior. Psychoanalytic criticism can provide insights into why students have the way they do. By considering unconscious factors such as repressed emotions, unresolved conflicts, or the influence of childhood experiences, educators and counselors can better understand and support students in their academic and personal growth. The third use is enhancing creativity. In creative fields like literature, art, and music, psychoanalytic criticism can help students tap into their unconscious creativity by encouraging them to explore their dreams, fantasies, and inner thoughts. Educators can facilitate more authentic and innovative expressions in their work. Next is exploring motivation. Understanding the unconscious motivation of students can help educators tailor their teaching methods and content to better engage learners. It can also aid in addressing issues related to motivation, procrastination, or performance anxiety. Now, we have on the fifth number is teacher student relationships. Psychoanalytic principles can offer insights into the dynamics of teacher student relationships. It can also help educators better understand the unconscious dynamics at play, such as transference and countertransference, and how these dynamics can affect the learning environment. These can then lead to more effective and supportive teacher student interaction. Now, next one is the literary analysis. In literature, Psychoanalytic criticism can be used to delve into the deeper psychological motivations and conflicts of fictional characters. This approach can provide students with a more nuanced understanding of literary works, character development, and the underlying symbolism in text. Now, second to the last is we have psychoanalytic criticism. It isn't limited to literature or psychology. It can be applied across various disciplines. For instance, in history, students can analyze the unconscious motivations of historical figures and their impact on events. In sociology, it can be used to understand the hidden social and cultural factors influencing behavior. And of course, last but not the least, some educational institution and programs incorporate psychoanalytic principles in wellness, personal growth initiatives, and also students can learn to explore their inner thoughts and emotions, promoting emotional intelligence and resilience. So that's why it's really important to know that the application of psychoanalytic criticism and learning is not without controversy. Critics always argue that it can be overly speculative and may not be have empirical support. However, when used judiciously and in conjunction with other educational psychological approaches, it can provide valuable insights into the human experience, contributing to more holistic and empathetic educational practices. Now, here are some examples of how this approach can be used in learning environments. So, number one, the role of the unconscious in creative writing pedagogy. Psychoanalytic criticism encourage authentic expression in students by tapping into their unconscious creativity. Understanding the role of the unconscious can enrich creative writing. And the next one is dream analysis as a tool for self reflection and personal development in higher education. Dream analysis enhances self awareness and personal growth in higher education. This approach fosters personal development and self reflection among students. So, in conclusion, psychoanalytic criticism offers a unique perspective in research, education, and in learning. It helps us understand hidden motivations, desires, and conflicts, enriching our understanding of the human experience. We encourage you to explore this approach in various fields. And that's it. That would be all my discussion for today. Again, this is Psychoanalytic Criticism and Learning, and I am Mary Grace Orsal. For the next discussion, we have here Psychoanalytic Criticism Basic Principles, and that would be discussed with my fellow member. Thank you so much.
Psychoanalytic criticism basic principles. Simon Freud pioneered psychoanalytic criticism, a type of literary criticism which analyzes literature as if it were a dream, reading into underlying messages and themes which prove to be telling of the subconscious of the author and primary characters. So here are the psychoanalytic criticism basic principles. First, we have the unconscious mind. Psychoanalytic criticism emphasizes the role of the unconscious mind in shaping human thoughts, desires, and behaviors. It asserts that much of what we do and think is influenced by unconscious drives, fears, and desires. This principle emphasizes that our conscious thoughts and actions are only a small part of our mental processes. The unconscious mind contains repressed memories, desires, and fears that influence our behavior and can be explored in literature to understand characters' motivation and conflicts. Next, we have the Oedipus complex. One of the central concepts in psychoanalytic criticism is the Oedipus complex, which involves the child's unconscious sexual desires for the opposite sex parent and rivalry with the same sex parent. This complex is seen as a universal aspect of human psychology and often appears in literary works as themes of forbidden desires, desire and family conflicts. The Oedipus complex is a psychological concept where a child experiences unconscious sexual desires for the opposite sex parent and rivalry with the same sex parent. In literature, characters, relationships, and conflicts can mirror this dynamic, often involving elements of attraction, jealousy, and family tensions. Next, we have symbols and metaphors. Psychoanalytic critics examines the use of symbols, metaphors, and imagery in literature to uncover deeper, often unconscious meanings. They believe that these symbols can represent repressed desires and anxieties. Psychoanalytic criticism looks at symbols and metaphors in literature as manifestations of hidden desires, anxieties, and unconscious conflicts. For example, a phallic symbol might represent sexual desire or power, while a dark cave could symbolize the unconscious mind itself. Next, we have defense mechanisms. Freudian defense mechanisms like repression, displacement, and sublimation are often explored in psychoanalytic criticism. These mechanisms can help readers understand how characters cope with their inner conflicts and traumas. Characters in literature often employ defense mechanisms, which are psychological strategies to protect themselves from anxiety and emotional distress. Understanding these mechanisms can help us interpret why characters act in certain ways. For instance, a character who represses traumatic memories may exhibit signs of psychological distress. Next, we have dreams and fantasies. Psychoanalytic critics pay attention to dreams, sequences, and fantasies in literature as they can reveal unconscious desires, fears, and conflicts. These elements are often seen as symbolic representations of the author's or character's inner worlds. In literature, dreams and fantasies often serve as a window into characters' inner worlds. Psychoanalytic critics analyze them to uncover hidden desires and fears. Dreams and fantasies can be symbolic representations of the character's subconscious conflicts. Next, sexuality and gender. Freud's theories on sexuality and gender play a significant role in psychoanalytic criticism. Critics analyze how sexual desires, gender roles, and identity formation are portrayed in literature. Freudian theories about sexuality and gender play a significant role in psychoanalytic criticism. This involves examining how characters' sexual desires and gender identity are depicted in the text, often revealing societal norms and individual struggles with identity and desire. Next, we have authorial intent. Psychoanalytic criticism sometimes investigates the author's own psychological motivation and conscious influence on their work. It seeks to uncover how the author's personal experiences and unconscious conflicts might be reflected in the text. Psychoanalytic criticism considers how an author's personal experiences, traumas, and unconscious conflicts might be expressed in their work. It looks for traces of the author's own psyche in the characters and themes of the text. Next, we have reader response. This approach also considers the reader's psychological reaction to the text and how their own unconscious processes might shape their interpretation. So, this aspect of psychoanalytic criticism explores how readers' own unconscious processes, desires, and anxieties can influence their interpretation of a text. It acknowledges that readers can bring their own psychological baggage to their reading experience. Next, we have conflict and resolution. Psychoanalytic critics often explore the conflicts within characters and their subsequent resolutions, viewing this as symbolic of the human struggle to reconcile inner tensions. In literature, the conflicts that characters face often reflect broader human struggles to resolve inner tensions, whether they are emotional, psychological, or moral. Psychoanalytic critics delve into these conflicts and their resolutions to uncover deeper meanings. And we have last, archetypes and myths. Psychoanalytic criticism draws on archetypal symbols, characters, and themes found in myths and collective unconscious, believing that literature taps into these universal human experiences. Psychoanalytic criticism often draws on universal archetypes and myths that are deeply rooted in the collective unconscious. These archetypes can manifest in characters, symbols, and themes, helping readers connect with the text on a subconscious level.
All right, now let's proceed to psychoanalytic criticism, philosophical stance, and example situations. Psychoanalytic theory is evident and is helpful in learning the behavior of a human. So we have here psychoanalytic theory, inner forces drive behavior. So let's have here an example situation, psychoanalytic theory in relationships. So we have here an example. Cheryl had grown up in an abusive home and couldn't wait to get to college to escape from her parents. She met some wonderful people at school, but it took her a long time to develop close friendships because of the trust issues she had developed as a child and teenager. Given this situation, so what is its implication to education or in a classroom teaching, in a classroom setting rather? So as teachers, we need to understand the background of our students so that we can help them develop holistically as a person. Next, we also have here psychoanalytic theory and traumatic events. So, an example situation is that Jack's mother left his family when he was a child. Ever since then, he has had a very difficult time trusting people because he is afraid they will abandon him. And its implication is that as teachers, we need to help our students to build trust on themselves and to others. It is our responsibility as a second parent. So, in loco parentes. So, it has a connection like knowing the background of our students. We also need to help them so that we can help them to grow as a better person. Next, we also have here psychoanalytic theory and compensation. So, an example is when Melanie graduated from college, she almost couldn't believe it. She never thought she'd do it because the words of her first grade teacher calling her a failure had always haunted her. So, it's an implication in teaching or in a classroom setting as teachers, we need to encourage our students to learn from their failure and to not be afraid of it. And we should not point out their mistakes. We should teach our students that committing mistakes is normal, that in committing mistakes they will grow as a person and they will become a better person.
That's it for cognitivism and psychoanalytic criticism. And we hope that you have learned something from today's discussion. Thank you and have a great day.